Everything is one,
Right.
and everything is none.
It really sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? Or maybe a glitch, like the universe's code is just broken.
Honestly, it sounds like a flat-out contradiction. I mean, there are two sentences that absolutely cannot be true at the same time. If everything is one, that implies this, huge, unified, heavy existence,
Okay.
fullness.
Right.
But if everything is none, it implies emptiness, a void. But the stack of texts we are deep diving into today, these philosophical explorations on the architecture of existence, they make a very bold claim.
A very bold claim. They argue that not only are both true, but you actually can't have one without the other.
And that is the central paradox we are grappling with today.
I'm glad you used the word grappling, because this isn't just some abstract theory we can casually observe from a distance. We're looking at a set of texts that really, they try to dismantle the boundaries between you, me, the chair you're sitting on, and the space between us. It's a real workout for the intuition.
Which is exactly what we're here for. Welcome to the deep dive. We've combed through this collection of philosophical treatises, these essays on non-duality, and, well, metaphysical inquiries, to answer a pretty massive question. What is the fundamental structure of reality?
And maybe more importantly, where do we fit into it? Because I think most of us feel like we're just walking around in reality, not part of its architecture.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a contemplative journey. We aren't here to give you a productivity hack or history lesson today. This is about the nature of reality itself. And the goal, according to these sources, is to dismantle the boundary between self and other.
Right. We're looking at identity not as a solid thing like a rock or a statue, but as something temporary, a pattern. And ultimately, we're trying to figure out what it means for the universe to, notice itself.
So let's start with those two definitions, the one and the none.
Yes, less. Because in my day-to-day life, I feel very separate from my coffee cup. I feel
Right.
very separate from the traffic I was stuck in this morning.
Which is a useful survival mechanism. You absolutely need to know where your hand ends and the hot coffee begins, or you're going to have a bad morning.
For sure.
But the sources argue that is a perceptual shortcut, not a fundamental truth. When the text says everything is one, it's not being poetic or sentimental, it's literal.
So define one in this context, because usually when people say we are all one, it feels a bit...
A bit kumbaya.
Yeah, exactly. A bit kumbaya.
Well, in these texts, one means no separation, no true edges. Think about the room you are in right now. You see a table, a lamp, a wall. You see them as distinct objects.
Right.
But the concept of one suggests that form arises inside unity, not outside of it. There is no final this versus that. Every distinct thing only exists because it is part of a whole that allows that distinction to appear.
Okay, I'm going to push back here. If I take a saw and cut a table in half, I've created two things. I've created a separation. There is now a gap between piece A and piece B.
You've created a new arrangement of forms, yes. But have you actually separated them from existence? The air in the gap is part of the same field. The sawdust is part of the same field. The space they occupy is continuous. The text uses this great phrasing. Boundaries are places where we stop paying attention to connection.
That's a sticky idea. Boundaries are places where we stop paying attention. So physically and fundamentally, there is no point where the table ends and the air begins in a way that truly separates them from the whole. It's all one fact.
Precisely. It's one continuous field of being.
Okay, I can follow that. That's the one. It's the canvas everything is painted on. But then we get to the other side of the coin, which feels a bit more slippery and frankly a little darker.
Yeah.
Everything is none.
It can sound bleak if you equate none with non-existence. If you think it means nothing matters or nothing is real. But that's not what the text is saying at all.
Okay.
None means no fixed thing, no object with a permanent independent identity.
So it's not about emptiness. It's about a lack of...
What?
Thingness.
Exactly. It's a lack of permanent substance. There is no final stuff you can point to and say, this exists all on its own, independent of everything else.
Okay.
There's this one line in the source material that just, it really stuck with me. What seems solid is process. What seems stable is motion slowed to perception.
Motion slowed to perception. That sounds like physics, like how a rock is just vibrating atoms. But to us, it looks like a doorstop because our eyes aren't fast enough to see the vibration.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right.
Or think of a whirlpool in a river. It looks like a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can point to it. You can name it. You can say, don't swim in that whirlpool.
Yeah, of course.
But does the whirlpool have any existence apart from the water flowing through it?
No. If you take the water away, the whirlpool vanishes. It's not an object you can put in a box.
And if you stop the flow of the river, the whirlpool vanishes. It's a pattern of motion, not a solid object. And that is the none. The form is real. The whirlpool is really there.
Yeah.
But the independent existence of the form is an illusion. It is just the river behaving in a spiral.
So when you put them together, one and none, you get this unified field, the one expressing itself as these temporary moving patterns, the none.
Correct. You can't have the whirlpool without the water. And the water naturally expresses itself as whirlpools.
This brings us to the core metaphor that pops up repeatedly in the text, and I think this is the easiest way to visualize this dynamic. The wave and the ocean.
It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. It does the heavy lifting for this concept.
It makes the abstract concrete.
So let's paint the picture for everyone listening. You have a wave. It has height, a speed, a shape. You can take a picture of it. You can name it the big wave. But, and here is where the sources push us, is the wave separate from the ocean?
If you tried to take the wave out of the ocean to put it in a bucket, you wouldn't have a wave anymore. You'd just have water.
Right.
The wave is not a thing. It is the ocean behaving in a specific way. It's a verb, essentially. The ocean is waving.
The ocean is waving.
Right.
And the text applies this directly to us, to you, to me. A person is not separate from the world they move through.
It challenges the very idea of an independent self. We usually think of ourselves as these little distinct entities navigating an external environment, like characters in a video game moving through a background level.
I am the protagonist. The world is the level design. That feels like the default human setting.
Exactly. But this perspective says, no, that's an error in perception. Identity is relational. Identity is a pattern the whole makes for a moment. You aren't in the universe. You are the universe.
That's a bit of an ego check, isn't it? To think of myself not as a main character, but as a pattern the whole is making. It implies I'm not really doing the living. The universe is peopling right here.
That is a great way to put it. Just as the ocean waves, the universe peoples.
Oh.
The source uses another analogy. A thought is not separate from awareness. You can't have a thought just floating around outside of a mind. Similarly, nothing has an independent self. Everything is strictly relational.
This is where I want to push back a little, or at least play devil's advocate. Because I feel like I have an independent self. I have secrets you don't know. I have a perspective behind my eyes that you can't access. If we are all one, why is my experience so walled off? Why can't I feel your toothache?
That's the crux of the none aspect, the pattern. The pattern creates a localized perspective. The sources acknowledge that the experience of individuality is vivid and real as an experience, but they argue it's like looking through a camera aperture.
Okay.
The aperture restricts the light to create a specific image. But the light itself is continuous. Yourself is the aperture. It's a necessary limitation to have an experience.
But the wall isn't a barrier to existence. It's just the frame of the picture.
Exactly. Without the frame, there's no picture, just blinding white light.
Okay, so if nothing has an independent self and everything is just a pattern, what happens to the stage we are acting on? I'm talking about time and space. Because the source material goes pretty hard on deconstructing those two.
It does. And this is where we have to, loosen our grip on our common sense a little bit. The texts argue that time and space aren't absolute containers. They are properties of the pattern, not the canvas.
Let's look at time first. The text says, there is no absolute past or future. Which to me is confusing because I definitely remember eating breakfast this morning, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have dinner later.
Of course. But notice what the text says next. Time is a measurement of change inside the whole. Think about it. We only perceive time because things move or change. If absolutely nothing changed, no atoms vibrated, no planets moved, no neurons, a fired time would essentially just collapse.
So time isn't a timeline that we are traveling along like a train on a track.
No. Time is how we measure change. The text emphasizes that the now is not a sliced sandwich between a past that is gone and a future that hasn't happened. The now is the only place anything ever exists.
Meaning, when I remember breakfast, I'm remembering it now. When I imagine dinner, I'm imagining it now.
Exactly. The past is a memory trace existing in the present. The future is a projection appearing in the present. The actual event, the being, is always immediate. The text calls it the eternal now. Right? Eternal as in a really long time, but eternal as in outside of time.
That breaks your brain a little if you sit with it. We always think we're moving toward the future, but really, we're just always here, and the arrangement of the room is changing.
Precisely. And the same logic applies to space. We tend to think of space as a container. an empty box that God dropped all the stars and planets into.
Right. Space is the vacuum, the emptiness between things.
But the text argues, space is relationship. Distance isn't a physical void, it's a perception of difference. Near and far are agreements between viewpoints inside the same field.
And then there's this line that I highlighted 3 times because it felt like the linchpin of the whole argument. There is nowhere outside of existence to stand.
That is the key insight. You cannot step outside of the universe to look at it, because you are it. There is no outside. If space is relationship, then everything is connected through that relationship.
Which forces us to rethink cause and effect. We usually see life as a row of dominoes. A pushes B, B pushes C.
Right.
I worked hard, so I got the promotion. I ate the bad sushi, so I got sick.
And that is useful. The source admits cause and effect are useful patterns for navigating the world. If you touch fire, you get burned. Keep that pattern.
Please. Yes.
But they argue it is incomplete. Because if everything is one, then everything is affecting everything else simultaneously.
Like a spider web instead of a row of dominoes. If you touch one thread, the whole web vibrates.
Even more interconnected than that. The text suggests that because there is no separation, the universe is a singular event happening all at once. We just read it in sequence A, then B, then C, because that is how our minds are built to process data.
We read the book page by page, but the whole story exists simultaneously in the book.
That's a great way to put it.
So nothing truly begins and nothing truly ends. It's just one giant shifting kaleidoscope.
That is a beautiful image.
Yeah.
Yes. Continuous flux. Dependent origination is a term often used in these types of philosophies. Nothing exists on its own. Everything exists because everything else exists.
Okay, so we've established that I'm a wave, time is a measurement, and space is a relationship. That's all very cosmic and trippy. But I always want to bring this back to the deep dive mission. So what? How does this actually change how I live my life?
Right.
If I'm just a pattern, why should I care about anything? Why bother being a good wave?
This is the most common objection to this kind of thinking. It's the fear of nihilism. If there's no me, then nothing matters. But the texts argue the exact opposite. They say this one-none perspective isn't just metaphysics. It's the root of true connection and ethics.
It talks about dissolving the other, but we definitely experience difference. I am not you. We have different bank accounts, different memories.
And if you get pinched, I don't feel it.
Exactly.
The source acknowledges that. It says the experience of difference is meaningful. It doesn't deny that you have a unique perspective. But it says that difference doesn't imply separation at the level of being. And this is where compassion comes in.
How so?
In this view, compassion isn't a moral rule imposed from the outside. It isn't be nice to your neighbor because a book told you to or because you'll get in trouble. It is recognition.
Recognition of what?
Recognition that the other is actually just another wave of the same ocean. When you hurt another, you are, in a very literal sense within this framework, hurting the only thing that exists, which includes you.
So it's enlightened self-interest, but the self is everyone.
Exactly. It shifts ethics from obedience to alignment. If you realize your hand is part of your body, you don't need a law to tell you not to smash it with a hammer. You just don't do it because it hurts you.
Right.
The text argues that social violence and cruelty come from the illusion that the other person is truly separate from you.
This reframes good and evil too. The text takes a very nuanced stance here. It says, good and evil are contextual judgments, not cosmic substances.
That's a bold statement, isn't it? Usually we think of good and evil as these two armies fighting in the sky.
Right. The light side and the dark side.
But here, the universe doesn't label things. It generates conditions. What we call evil is described in the text as fragmentation, fear, or misalignment within the whole. It's not an opposing force to unity. It's a distortion of it.
Like a knot in a muscle. It's not a foreign invader. It's just the muscle reacting poorly to stress.
Precisely. It's misalignment. It's the wave trying to separate itself from the ocean and thrashing about. That thrashing causes suffering.
I want to shift gears to something that feels like the ultimate misalignment, or at least the ultimate fear for most of us, death. Because if I am just a pattern, well, patterns dissolve. And that is terrifying.
It is the primal fear.
The text has a section on creation and death that I found strangely comforting, but also difficult. Let's start with creation. It says creation wasn't a one-time event.
Right. It's not that the universe was created billions of years ago and now it's just running on a battery. Creation is continuous differentiation. The whole is constantly expressing itself as forms, stories, stars, and, yes, us. It's happening right now.
You are being created in this very moment. Nothing is added, nothing is removed, only rearranged.
That is the physics of it, isn't it? Conservation of energy,
Well cut.
but applied to identity.
So, when we talk about death, if nothing is removed, what happens when we die?
This is where the wave metaphor comes back with the most power. The text says death is not annihilation. It is not an ending in the sense of a screen going black forever. It is the release of a pattern back into the field that generated it.
The wave falls back into the ocean it never left.
That line always stops me in my tracks. It implies that the fear of death is the fear of losing the form, the shape of the wave. We love our shape, we love our name, our history, our body.
Oh, we do.
But the water, the substance of what you are, is never in danger. Form dissolves, but existence does not.
It's weirdly beautiful. It takes the pressure off. We are so obsessed with maintaining our little wave shape, terrifically afraid of crashing into the shore. But the crash isn't the end of the water.
And think about the relief in that. If you are the ocean, the crashing of the wave is just a movement, not a tragedy.
But does that strip life of meaning? If we're just temporary patterns destined to dissolve, what's the point? The text is very specific about this. It says, meaning isn't imposed from the outside. There is no single purpose of the universe written on a stone tablet somewhere.
Right, it says purpose exists wherever coherence appears. Meaning emerges when awareness recognizes itself through form.
This brings us to the section on language, because frankly, everything we are saying right now is kind of struggling to capture the vibe of the text. I feel like I'm using a net to catch water.
The source material explicitly warns us about this. It says, language cannot fully describe one none. Why? Because language is built on duality. Subject, verb, object. I see the tree. The grammar itself forces a separation between me and the tree.
Every definition excludes. If I say apple, I am implicitly saying not pear, not table, not sky. Language cuts reality into pieces so we can handle it.
Exactly. But reality, the one, isn't in pieces. So language is basically a clumsy tool for this specific job. It's like trying to sew with a hammer.
That is why the text relies so heavily on paradox.
Yes, it says paradox is not a failure of logic. It is a signal that the truth exceeds the tool being used. When you hear everything is one and everything is none, your logical mind says error. But your intuition might sense something deeper.
It bypasses the analytical mind to hit something more resonant.
Right.
So if there is no grand external purpose and language fails us, what are we left with? The text builds to this final insight, which I jokingly called the universal selfie in my notes, but I think that actually holds up.
It is an apt description, actually.
Yeah.
Let's look at the implications listed at the end. You are not separate from existence. You are not a fixed thing. You are not nothing.
You are a localized expression of the whole, temporarily appearing as a perspective.
That is the crux of it. You are the universe, localized. You are an aperture through which the whole is viewing itself.
It's the ultimate aha moment. The fact that we can even think about these things, the fact that we can sit here and discuss one, none. What is that?
The text says, the fact that this can be known at all is itself part of the same unity noticing itself. It's not you, a tiny separate human, discovering the universe. It is the universe, in the form of a human, recognizing its own nature.
That completely flips the script on loneliness, doesn't it? You can't really be alone if you are the whole thing.
You can feel alone as a wave, sure. But as the ocean, impossible.
So let's recap this journey we've been on, because we've covered a lot of metaphysical ground. We started with the idea that solid objects and fixed identities are illusions, convenient patterns, rather than permanent substances.
We move through the heavy concepts of time and space, seeing them not as containers, but as internal measurements of change and relationship within the whole.
We saw that ethics, compassion, good and evil are really about alignment with that unity. If you hurt someone, you're pinching your own skin. And we redefined death not as an end, but as a release of a pattern back into the source.
And finally, we landed on this idea that our very awareness, our ability to ask, who am I, is the universe waking up to itself.
It is a profound shift in perspective. It moves you from being a stranger in a strange land to being, well, home. You are the land. You are the stranger. You are the looking.
It changes the texture of experience. It makes the highs less gripping and the lows less devastating. It adds a background note of peace.
It feels surprisingly lighter than the heavy existential dread we usually get with these topics.
It should feel light. If you are everything, there's nothing to lose.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over, something that naturally flows from everything we've discussed today. The text implies that you are a localized expression of the whole. So here is the question.
It raises a fascinating inquiry.
If you are just a localized expression, who is the you that is listening to this deep dive right now, is it the wave listening, or is it the ocean listening to itself?
That is the question.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you in the next one.